Welcome, everyone, to the first episode of the Newton podcast. We're here to talk today about how capital is moving on chain faster than what the current rails and infrastructure were built for. There's a missing layer, and we're going to talk to the team that's building it. My name's Mohammad. I'm the managing director of the Magic Newton Foundation, which is the entity responsible for the governance of the Newton protocol. I'm joined today by Sean Lee, the CEO and co-founder of Magic Labs, who's the core developer of Newton Protocol, and Jeff Marsilio, who is the founding head of commercial for the Magic Newton Foundation. So Sean, I'd like to start with you. For those who know about Magic but haven't seen you before, could you tell us a little bit about yourself and what is Magic?
Of course. My name is Sean Lee. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Magic Labs. We started Magic actually in 2018. I'd say that's about 8 years ago, which is quite a while. Magic is the company that invented embedded wallets. It's a technology that lets you sign into any on-chain application the same way you would log into a normal website. So no seed phrases, no browser extensions, while still being non-custodial. The simplest way to say it is, Magic is the infrastructure that gets people on-chain, right, through great UX and great trust, and we're that front door. So till today, we have onboarded over 200,000 developers, over 57 million wallets, um, and you've probably used us without knowing it already. So we power wallets for Polymarket, a truly breakout success for mainstream crypto adoption, among others like Wallet Connect and Naver. And Newton is the next thing that we're developing. So, Magic gets you in the door, and Newton helps decide what's allowed once you're inside. So, I'm excited to talk more about it today. I'll pass it on to Jeff.
Cool. Yeah, Jeff, I know that you joined Newton earlier this year. Could you tell us a little bit about your journey in crypto and how you ended up here at Newton?
The good news, Mohammed, is for a while there, if you remember, I was kind of counting the days and then the weeks, and now I've stopped counting. But I think it's only really been about 10 weeks that I've been at Newton, and it feels like a lifetime, man. And I'm having a lot of fun working with you and Sean and everybody on the project. My path has been a kind of a zig and a zag, and in that process, I've crossed paths with Magic and the Magic Wallet before. I started as a lawyer. I was a lawyer for about 8 years. I was at Latham, where I know you were for a time. I was at Sullivan and Cromwell, and then I went to the NBA, and I was one of the media executives running digital at the NBA for about 8 years. And if that seems like a big pivot, it kind of is, but the joke in media is that NBA stands for nothing but attorneys. So there were a lot of lawyers over there, and it was a gentle transition from my legal background. But back when NBA Top Shot was a really big success, and it was my job to explain what an NFT is to the 30 owners of NBA teams. I met co-founders in an NFT platform called Nifty's, which I left the NBA to be co-founder and CEO of. And one of our first most important partners was Magic, because we recognized at the time that the biggest challenge to adoption of crypto was really just onboarding, getting mainstream users in. I think that's thanks to folks like the Magic team. That's a largely settled problem. And now, of course, Newton is focused on what I kind of think of it as the final boss. Sold Nifties to MoonPay, and I've stayed in the space ever since. But Newton, I think, really represents one of the biggest opportunities I've been lucky enough to be involved with.
Sean, you mentioned how Magic already is powering some of the biggest apps right now in crypto, like Polymarket. Before it got that big, and what was your original thesis and problem you were set out to solve with Magic?
Yeah. So the original thesis was really simple. Crypto had a big onboarding problem. The tag was really extraordinary, and I got really, really excited by the tag. I actually built like many projects before Magic, starting Magic, and all of them faced onboarding problems. So I decided, I'll be the first to like really bang through that door, right, and solve this hard problem. And I would say this is not just a user experience problem. It's actually a user experience and trust problem, because the space, really reveres decentralization and trustless models and great security. Um, but at the time, there isn't really like a great like technological solution for wallet management, besides fully custodial institutional solutions, right? Where the thesis when we started was a deeper bet underneath, right? That we need to solve the hard problems around trust while we solve the UX problems. So while it sounds simple, but it requires trust infrastructures like trusted execution environments. And we have created patterns and solutions like delegated key management, where we can build trust with our customers and users by never being able to see the user's private key in any part of our infrastructure. And that level of trust built through brand and technology and a great UX is what I believe that made Magic a success. And with the adoption and the number of wallets, that's how I would say the thesis have played out.
So Magic Lab solved that front door problem of onboarding, getting people on chain. And Newton is meant to solve a deeper problem, another hard problem, as you put it.
Mhm.
So, what did you see that told you, this problem that Newton is trying to solve is worth solving, and where you want to spend your efforts?
It's actually quite a natural transition, both from an internal, like Magic perspective, and also a kind of a holistic understanding of like financial like industries, right? When Magic started, we were working on, I would say, authentication, right? Solving the problem of like login, identifying if this person is who they say they are, and having them and granting them a wallet. And now I think in any industry, right? Like after you solve authentication problems, you naturally move into authorization problems. So once they're in the door, now you decide whether certain actions are being allowed, right? And this played out like over and over again as certain ecosystems, platform, and infrastructure matures, right? So and I think this would be truly the unlock, right, for the next tens of trillions of capital moving on chain, and also really opening up the crypto market to both like mainstream users and also institutions. So and if you sort of break down um, like financial industries, right? And there's really three layers, right? There's authorization, clearing, settlement, and I would say crypto today solves the settlement problem really well. Visa has chosen crypto to be their settlement. And but we don't have the Visa in crypto, like we don't have that authorization layer, which is what makes Visa such a valuable company in the first place. So by solving authorization problems, we can position ourselves in this large missing gap and this difficult like UX security trust problems that we are used to solving, um, and which also synergizes obviously with authentication really well, right? So yeah, that's I would say kind of the rationale right behind this.
Got it. Yeah. Jeff, I want to ask you a question. When I view the landscape of crypto and traditional finance, there are very extreme ends to this spectrum, right? On one hand, you have crypto. It's open, permissionless, wild, wild west. Feels like there's no rules sometimes. Do your own research. on the other end of that spectrum, you have traditional finance, right? Everything is safe, whitelists, very protected, liability is, taken care of. But at the same time, is closed off to DeFi. What is your take on each of these two sides? What parts do they get right? What do they get wrong?
Yeah, I don't think that the differences are as extreme as they often first appear. I think crypto is still maturing, and there are still too many examples of what happens when risks aren't properly addressed, and we see them all the time. The guardrails that keep traditional finance safe, that have matured over many decades, they really only get you so far in crypto. They exist for very good reasons, but you can't just kind of pick them up and bolt them onto to crypto and kind of wash your hands of it. You need a new system. But I think what people sometimes forget is that what we're excited about when we talk about decentralized finance, the 24/7 access, the kind of Lego pieces that snap together, interoperability, liquidity that can flow across every kind of border all the time. All of that really comes from what Sean was talking about, which is really removing the necessity of trusting individuals, of trusting intermediaries, of trusting counterparties, and removing that counterparty risk. And if you just bring all of that trust and all of that risk, that counterparty risk and intermediary risk, back into the system in order to enforce your safety rules or your policies, then you're kind of you're taking yourself back to square one. You're taking yourself out of all the advantages of blockchain. So that's where I kind of see where we are today. We see money moving on chain. We see trillions moving around the blockchain. But the rules that govern how it moves, what Sean was talking about, authorization, that's living off chain still in a lot of ways. It's living in legal agreements. It's living in UIs. It's not living in the blockchain where the settlement is happening. And really, that's the gap. That's the gap that we need to close. I sometimes call it the final boss. I feel like that's the final boss of trillions of assets being able to really move freely and enjoy all the benefits of blockchain.
Yeah. So you mentioned that authorization is the gap that is keeping trillions of dollars kind of sidelined from participating in DeFi. What are some of the? Can we break that down a little bit? What are some of the conditions that aren't really met today to solve that authorization problem on chain? What needs to be built to kind of close that gap?
So the big pieces of DeFi are at this point largely in place. You've got custody, you've got folks like Anchorage, you've got regulatory clarity that's only really getting better by the day. I mean, it's sort of tacking with the wind, but we're getting there, and we see the Clarity Act finding its way through the legislative process. You've got, of course, settlement and now privacy is, I wouldn't call it a solved problem, but there are just incredible teams addressing privacy for transactions, financial products, liquidity, just the innovation in that area is tremendous. As I said, I do think authorization is the final boss. What authorization itself requires is a few things, I think. First of all, it's the ability to write policies that are expressive and that draw upon real data. Policies that are static, policies that are simply templates, policies that can't get real off-chain or even on-chain data in real time. That's far too limited to bring in the guardrails that institutional capital expects. So you need an expressive policy engine. you need to be able to bring that data in without revealing all of that data. You need privacy. You need the ability to then run the logic in a way that doesn't cost an arm and a leg that kind of just destroys the transaction, and do it quickly enough where you can then send a result so that it can be enforced in real time on chain. So these are the components that you need. These are the components that we've built for Newton. If you don't do it that way, right? If any of those pieces is living off chain, then we're back to talking about trusting intermediaries. We're talking about trusting counterparties, or trusting legal agreements, or trusting UI that frequently breaks or goes down. And trust is slow. Trust is permeable. Trust doesn't scale. If we can solve on-chain authorization, we can offer the safety and the security that institutional capital expects. That's what closes the gap. That's what brings that money flowing on chain.
Love that. Okay. Sean, I have a question for you. Imagine you're speaking to someone who follows, fintech, crypto as a topic, but they've never really heard of Newton. To them, how would you describe it? What is Newton and what does it do for them?
I like to make analogies, so I would say Newton is to the on-chain economy is what Visa's authorization network is to credit cards. It's a real-time decentralized policy engine that decides, whether a transaction should be allowed before it settles, and it produces this receipt, right? A cryptographic receipt that anyone can verify, right? So that you can trust it. And I would say the crucial difference, right, from everything we've built is that Newton is also a kind of a neutral, a credibly neutral infrastructure, which is consisted of, not just, Magic or Newton Foundation, but a decentralized network of independent operators. And that's a very deliberate decision to make sure that there's no single gatekeeper, right, to this neutral infrastructure. And this is a sort of payment. Visa is a payment analogy, but this goes beyond, right? This is not just limited to on-chain transactions in the payment sense of the word, but also imagine, vault strategies, really complex vault strategies that involve both on-chain and off-chain operations, right? And surfacing that in a way that you can really, really trust what the curators are doing, right? Um, and going back to kind of the UX roots, right? It's I think vaults are like a great user experience where you can deposit into a vault and more yield come out the other end. It's the simplest experience you can ever have on DeFi. And now we're layering strong uh, um, trust and infrastructure on top of it to make sure that this is actually something that can be compliant, secure, and trusted by everyday users and institutions. So I went a bit long on that, but but yeah, it just kind of came out.
Yeah. Thanks. Jeff, I heard you talk about policies and how they're used in Newton to be in, I'll do that over. Jeff, I heard you mention policies and how Newton is used to enforce them. Can you give me a bit of a breakdown for someone who might not be familiar with that term? Like, what exactly is a policy? And I heard you also use the phrase before, policies in motion.
Yeah.
Yeah, what does that mean?
Yeah. Well, first of all, policy is just a rule about what's allowed. Only accredited investors can hold this RWA token, for example, or this vault can never put more than 20% in one asset, the kind of investment mandate that Sean was just referring to. Any rule that you can imagine to govern anything that might happen on chain can be considered a policy. Those policies can be compliance policies that are derived from regulations. They can be security policies to protect against bad actors or exploits or hacks, financial risk policies, you name it. Really, in all forms of finance, this is how institutions run. There's nothing exotic or unusual about policies. In Newton, we use Rego, which is just as a sort of an aside, is the policy language of Web 2. That's what everybody's using. That's what Goldman Sachs uses, what Capital One uses. Really, the open question that Newton, or questions that Newton is trying to resolve, is how expressive can these rules be? Where do they live? And then how do you make sure they're followed? Ideally, the rule lives in the smart contract and gets enforced in the transaction. The problem is that smart contracts have constraints, and most policies or rules end up, they depend on outside data. They need logic, as I referenced earlier. And smart contracts are just bad at that. They really can't pull in that data in real time. It's expensive. It's slow. Every bit of the complexity you add just introduces new security surface area. So what ends up happening is most of these policies are running off chain, and frequently institutions are kind of walling their assets off because it's the safest option. It's really the safest bet is to live in a kind of walled garden. Newton introduces another way. With Newton, policies live on chain, as I mentioned. They live outside the smart contract, but they're enforced through the smart contract at the transaction settlement. And it can pull data from outside. It can run its logic in a verifiable network, as Sean was referencing. So the rule moves with the assets, it moves with the money, it moves with the transaction. It goes across chains, it goes across apps. When we talk about policies in motion at Newton, that's what we mean. We're talking about policies that follow DeFi. They don't wall you in, and nonetheless keep you safe wherever you might be going on chain.
Got it. Sean, we talked about these policies and the fact that they're being enforced on chain. Can you explain a bit how that can be proved to be the case? How does Newton prove that your policy was met?
For sure. We're taking a phased approach, right, to roll this out as we go. And our vision around this is that no single party really decides, right? So essentially, evaluation happens across a decentralized network of independent operators that's operating on EigenLayer, and they would stake real capital. So, say if an operator signs off on something incorrectly, that stake gets slashed, right? So we want to make it so that being dishonest is expensive, right, and automatic, right? Where they get rewarded, right, for performing honestly and slash for performing dishonestly, right? And every approval is a verifiable cryptographic proof. So operators would produce a what the team called BLS aggregate signature. So it's a technical word. Basically, it's a to prove a stake-weighted majority, right, of the operators have agreed whether a transaction is compliant or not. And this all happens on the smart contract level on chain at the execution time, right? So no valid BLS aggregate signature, no transaction, right? That's the idea here. And the enforcement happens where the execution actually is. The third one is every yes or no evaluation would leave a on-chain compliance receipt, right? That is bound to the transaction. And there's an explorer, just like kind of block explorers that people are familiar with, to check for the compliance status of these transactions, which operator assigned and which outcome, and it cannot be edited or suppressed, after the fact. For example, a auditor or a regulator can come here and verify that everything followed according to the policy rules. We do it in a way where privacy is preserved. For instance, some rules and policies would actually require like sensitive off-chain data, let's say identity, and we can make sure that the data is privacy preserved, right? That is never exposed in this Explorer as well. So yeah, that's kind of the three, I would say the three stack to building trust for a Newton protocol.
Jeff, if you want the audience at home to remember just one thing about Newton, what would you want that to be?
I'd take it back to what you said at the top. You don't have to choose between the Wild West and a walled garden. You don't have to choose between open but dangerous and safe but closed off. You can choose a third way, the Newton way, which says you can keep capital safe, but also keep it moving. Enjoy the benefits of blockchain, interoperability, access, and of course, liquidity, and still have the rules and still have them enforced on chain and still have them verifiable in the ways that Sean was just referencing. I don't want to sound like overly idealistic, but you can really kind of have the benefits and you can kind of have the best of both worlds, of the traditional finance world, which is largely safe, and of this new, more innovative world that we are creating in blockchain. It's possible with Newton because we've created an authorization layer that closes this last remaining gap.
I want to shift gears for a second to one of the hottest topics in DeFi today, and that's vaults. You're an expert in this area. Can you walk us through a bit about some of the players in the vault stack? And explain a bit, like, how does Newton serve them?
It's such a fast-moving space. There are certainly experts, but I feel like I wake up every day and I've got to study real hard in order to keep up. And I'm sure a lot of the folks at home feel that way too. Just to kind of quickly level set, I think Sean referenced this a little earlier, but the term vaults is thrown around a lot and it's evolving very quickly. Essentially, in its simplest form, it's a way to pool capital. Someone, a manager of the vault, a curator, can run a strategy across DeFi protocols to earn yield. That's largely what it means. And it's like an on-chain fund, basically, right? As for the stack and the players, at the base layer, you have platforms. They can be more lending oriented or different kinds of DeFi primitives, but they are a means to provide the vault itself. Morpho, Veda, Lagoon, Euler, these are some of the really big names. On top of those sit a risk curator who essentially runs the strategy across DeFi protocols, one or more, within a mandate that they establish. And then there are the folks who deposit funds in. You can call them capital allocators or depositors or investors, LPs. They decide where among these different vaults to place their trust and their money. The curator, as I said, has a mandate. Like, I can only deploy into these markets. I never exceed this concentration limit. And then the allocator basically is depending on that promise. And today, as I referenced earlier, that promise is enforced with a mix of trust and handshakes and UI, promises made in UI, and maybe legal documents if they're lucky. But there are just too many ways for all those off-chain mechanisms to go wrong. That's why, in our view, a lot of the bigger pools of money have only really started to dip relatively their toes into the water when there are trillions more kind of waiting on the sidelines. We turn that mandate, that curator's mandate, into policies that are enforced on chain, and they're done so in a verifiable way. So, when I'm choosing where to put my money into a vault, I'm not just trusting that the curator is going to do what they said. I know that they are doing what they said, that they must do what they said, because the rules are memorialized on chain as policies through Newton. That's really the difference. That's the opportunity we see. And nobody else really has closed that gap the way that Newton is fast trying to do.
And one more for you, Jeff. With the Genius Act passed, right, and clarity right around the corner, fingers crossed. There's been a lot of regulatory alignment, really worldwide, coming towards the industry. What do you think the passing of the Clarity Act would mean for Newton?
I feel like I should make you answer this one, because you've been a lawyer more recently than me. But just stepping way back, right, to the highest level, clarity resolves major questions about what rules apply to what assets, right? CFTC, SEC, things like that, and that clears the way for institutions to move real volume on chain, because they want to follow the rules. They need to know what rules to follow. When they come, they need to bring their rules with them, and their mandates, their compliance requirements, and they need to know that their partners are enforcing their rules the way they say they're going to enforce them. And not to sound like kind of a broken record, but that is what we do. We turn those rules into policies, enforce them on every transaction, and do it in a way where you don't have to trust any individual to make sure it's happening, right? In a way that you can verify on chain. So the TLDR is, I think, clarity grows the market. I think it lives up to its name. I think that it really specifically grows things in the direction that Newton is pointed, where more capital comes on chain, but it needs to know the rules are being enforced, and that's what we do. That's good for Newton.
On that, Sean, I hear there are whispers of some launches upcoming, some announcements to share. For the listeners, do you have any alpha you could whisper to our ears to let us know what's around the corner?
The whispers are true. So yeah, there's a big launch, that's coming up in a couple of weeks, and with some amazing partners that Jeff have been working on, and we'll obviously share more. So yeah, give us a follow at Newton_XYZ on X.
Okay, tight-lipped as always. Cool. Fine, keep your secrets, all right? So from a commercial point of view, Jeff, where are you seeing the most excitement, right? What does early traction look like for the protocol and for adoption for Newton?
Yeah, I am seeing a lot of excitement. We're building methodically for the long term, and we think that DeFi and vaults and the rules that govern them is a huge long-term opportunity. So I say that just because I'm excited about what we've got coming too, but I view it as the first step in a very deliberate sequence that takes us, years into the future and into bigger and bigger spaces. There's lots of use cases for Newton. We talk mostly about DeFi and vaults, but it's huge for RWAs. It's huge for stable coins and payments and treasuries. We still think every day about agentic commerce and agentic finance, and are very passionate about that. If you remember, back a year ago, that was a big part of our focus. I think we learned that what we were building to power that was so much bigger than any one use case, but that doesn't mean we've forgotten how incredible the opportunity around agents really is. But all of that said, I do think vaults represent the best, biggest near-term opportunity. It's really, really ripe. And it's curators and it's vault platforms who are fighting to differentiate their offerings to attract institutional capital, where we're seeing that pull the strongest. And why I know it's real is because I talk to these institutions and I'm hearing the same thing from the other side of it, right? They want to know that there's something there to enforce compliance and enforce the rules. So it's early, and I want to be really honest about that. There's a lot of reasons that we are excited and working too hard on this and just really going all in on it. But we are lining up quite a lot and looking forward to sharing more details when it's a little riper.
Okay. I like it. Sean, I want to turn to you, and I want you to get your crystal ball out for me for a second here, and join me in this question of let's go 3 years into the future, and can you tell me what on-chain finance looks like?
Yeah, I would say 3 years out. I would say authorization layers will just, it won't be a concept. It should just be something that is assumed. The way that, nobody launches a card product today and wonders why fraud screening exists. The same way that you wouldn't put money in a vault or send a transaction on chain without authorization, right? So I would say, it would be something that would be taken for granted, just like easy to create wallets, right? That Magic has created over the past years. And I think with this, uh, the big unlock is what I say, like public liquidity, but private execution. So institutions will be managing trillions, and they can finally participate in this same open, composable DeFi markets as everyone else, while being able to prove compliance cryptographically through Newton, in real time without leaking client data or, having to retreat into completely off-chain alternatives. And this dissolves that kind of conundrum, the false choice, right? That Jeff mentioned between the Wild West and open ecosystem. So the industry has no longer has to be stuck to pick either or, either kill weaken compliance to stay decentralized, or centralized compliance and kill liquidity and composability, right? And having compliance become this, shared and neutral infrastructure actually makes compliance and trust a friend rather than an enemy, right? So, and that I think is going to be, just completely bridges the gap of parity, right, between the traditional financial world and the on-chain world. I think that is really the missing piece. And what's even more exciting is, I've just seen this happen. I think Robinhood launched an AI trading agent recently, and the other really really exciting development that's happening, which I think it's really exciting, but a tad early, is AI agents trading. I think 3 years from now there will be uh, maybe even more agents than humans, making transactions and trading at machine speed, and it's in even more dire need of authorization and guardrails, um, and because there's no human kind of really in the loop and checking everything. So it's actually really, really important, kind of like a seatbelt to autopilot, right, for these agents. So I think we're just going to see more and more scenarios where authorization is just absolutely necessary for these upcoming developments. So we're building the ark before the flood, but in like a positive way. So and yeah, I think crypto spent maybe a decade, 15 years perfecting settlement. The next decade will be about authorization, to really bridge the gap, right, from the traditional finance into this new on-chain world.
Sean, Jeff, I really enjoyed today's conversation, learning more about Newton's architecture and how it can be used to solve today's pressing problems. Give us a follow on X, Newton_XYZ, and we're also on LinkedIn and YouTube. You can find us there. So until next time, take care.